Hi, I will show you how to create hairstyle like that. Remember to update the add-on first. So let's start by adding Sculpt for base mesh. You can do that by loading preset from library. If you do not have Hairtool library installed, just follow documentation, then go to the subcomponents and select the Sculpt preset and then click Append. You see in the outliner we have the Sculpt and it is placed on top. I will just move this closer to the character head. This sculpt has the shrink wrap modifier attached to it. So I will go to that modifier and for the target I will pick the character head. We can now apply this modifier and now it's time to add the hair strands on top. So the basic hair tool menu is Ctrl-Shift-H pie menu. The content of the pie menu will change depending on the selection. So currently we selected empty mesh without any hair system attached. So we have, for example, option to generate hair system strand generator. And this will add hair cards with default UVs and default material. And you can adjust some settings in here, like maybe increase the length or change the density. Now the same properties you see in the pop-up can be accessed from the menu in here in the deformers. And also if you want to bring back the pop-up, Ctrl-Shift-H, and you see the options are now slightly different. Those are context sensitive, but you can bring the pop-up again in here. Now I want to comb those strands, but to make life easier, I want to reduce the amount of the strands. And before that, I just wanted to show you that the distribution of the strands is not that uniform. Like we get bald spot in here and then a few strands in one place. Now we can fix that by going into the strand generator and changing distribution from random to Poisson disk. I will explain now this on the simpler setup. We have the plane, and if I change the distribution, I can copy density 1000 and with the random distribution switch now to Poisson disk. So with the same density it will look exactly the same. Now there is the minimum distance. If I set this to 1 centimeter, the points that are closer than 1 centimeter to each other will be removed. So you can imagine kind of like the disk around each of those spheres, and if there is another sphere inside, it will be removed. When I set this to 2 centimeters, now the closest strands will be 2 centimeters away, and to compensate the bald spots, I could fill them with the increased density. Now pay attention that when there are no more like free spots, increasing density may no longer add too many points. Like I just doubled the density and we got like only 2 more points. So at some point, instead of increasing density, you will see that sometimes I am just decreasing the spacing distance. So anyway, let's now apply the same technique on the hair strands. So I will copy density, switch to Poisson disk, paste the density, and set the distance between strands. In this case, maybe around 5 centimeters. This looks good. And to save time on combing, I will want to use symmetry. So from the add menu for deformers, I will add mirror. And we got a bunch of like those duplicates. Since before mirror, we got one strand here, then the left side got mirrored to the one side, then we got mirror from the other side, so a bunch of duplicates. Anyway, the easy way to fix those is to just enable bisect. It will then remove strands from the left and duplicate strands from the right to left. However, there are still some double strands, like for example this one. Without mirror, we have this strand that is very close to center. So after mirror, we got like double strand because of that. And there is a way to also fix that by increasing the bisect distance to 1 centimeter. It will basically search for the strands that are 1 centimeter away from the center line and remove all those strands in this area. In this case, actually, I want different behavior. I would prefer actually to match those like two strands into one in the center. And if you go to mirror and use the update menu, you will see there is the new option bisect clear mode. So this will work the old way, where the strands in here were removed, but I can now disable this option, and now those strands will be matched together into one in the center. So I can apply the same technique in the strands in the back by just increasing the distance or the bisect. So now those two strands got matched into one in the center. Okay, so now we can groom this, but first we have to convert those hair strands to real geometry. So I can use Ctrl-Shift-H and bake, use bake, but bake is disabled since the hair system is attached to scalp and you cannot groom curves if you have scalp mesh. For that we have to transfer the hair system to curve first. We can do that using Ctrl-Shift-H, transfer hair system, and it will move hair system from the scalp mesh to empty curve. And now you will see that we have the bake option available. So those procedural strands will be now baked into real geometry. If I go to outliner, you see the hair system is attached to curve. And if I go to edit mode, we can move them now around. So the idea is that we can go now to sculpt mode and comb the hair strands. I will select the comb brush with the projected method, with mirror, with the collision to the scalp mesh. Just in case, you may press A to select all the strands, because if the strands are not selected, then you won't be able to comb them. And hair tool comes with its own modeling tools that can help you with the modeling of the hair strands. You can access that from the left side. In the very bottom, you have the hair modeling. This will change a bunch of hotkeys. You can see all the hotkeys that were overridden in here. For example, if I right-click on the hair tip and move it around, we have this kind of rope-like physics. I can select everything, and you get something like that. I can use rotate, scale, and if I want to make this symmetrical, we'll just apply this symmetry mode. So this can be also used for modeling. Another useful tool is the extend under the E key. So I can select everything, make hair strands longer. Also there is one more tool. If I select a bunch of strands, I can press Ctrl D, then left click and drag, and you can use this gizmo with grab tool, with rotate, or with scale to move the selected strands. And maybe I will just quickly show you one more. Like, you have a bunch of those tools, but there is an option to change the rope-like physics to the root move mode. I will disable the soft selection fall off, and for example now if I use rotate, it will rotate the hair strands around the root. So let's say this looks okay. In here I used the E key for extrusion and making hair strands shorter, longer. But for now, let's say this is good enough. Now I want to add a bunch of new child strands. I will go to hair systems and add new strand generator. And you see those new strands were automatically interpolated towards the guides. I can maybe show them with the draft strands overlays. So you see the green strands were the one that we added previously, and not green ones are the one that were just added. And without interpolation, they will be just straight. And the way the interpolation is set up in the hair tool is by usage of tags. So basically you can assign a tag, which is kind of the name. You can assign those tags to a bunch of strands. So for example, in the hair system setup, the guides strands, the green ones that we added previously, they receive the tag guide. And now this means that other hash system can use those strands and, for example, use them for interpolation. And to do this, we have to go to the second hash system and set the parent tag to the strands we want to use as guide. So, for example, if I change the name of the guide strands to AAA, interpolation won't work, but in the column for the parent, I can change the name, the tag for the guide strands to AAA, and see now interpolation works. So now I will go back and switch again, copy density, switch to Poisson disk sampling, paste the density, maybe actually increase this 10 times, and let's say the spacing this time I will set to 1 centimeter. Now let's see how this will look with textures. So go back to the material view, and the texture is bit soft and bit too transparent to my liking. And maybe now I will explain a tiny bit about the material and the UVs. So they are attached to hair curves in the profile section. In here you have the option to change the material. By default it will use the Blender, the hair tool default material, and you have the UV data stored in this object. To edit those UVs, you will actually have to go to the UV image editor, and let's load the default texture hair strip depth. And to edit the UVs, I can go to the right side in the header and select the hair tool hair UV. Those are the default UV boxes. You can press X to remove them, left click and drag to create new one, or Shift D to duplicate, scale, grab around, and when you like the changes, you can press enter. But I do not want to edit those, so I will cancel with right click. So anyway, now I want to use this dense texture from this UV region on the hair strands. To attach this UV box to the hair strands, you do this actually in the deformers UV region distribute. This will be usually added automatically by the add-on, otherwise you may not see the texture on the strands, depending on the setup. So anyway, this is now using all UV regions, but I want to pick manually UV region, so use this button. And if you want, you can use the T key to show the texture, and I will just click on the last box. So you can pick any of those, or shift click to select multiple ones, but in my case I will just pick the last one, enter to save. And now we have slightly denser texture. I will now change profile type from flat to curly profiles, and this is now way too big. So if this is too big, first parameter to change is global size. I want to make it smaller, 10 times. And let's say it looks good enough. Maybe the hair strands need a bit more tweaking, so I will maybe move them around. Switch back to the chain mode. Make this shorter or longer. And sometimes it may be that your child strands are not following the geometry. I'm not quite sure why, but Blender does not like in some curve types. So basically the fix is to go to edit mode, select all the strands, all the guides, go to curve menu, set type to poly, and this will fix the interpolation if your child strands are not following the guides. I will maybe move some strands around, make some shorter, some longer. Now this will be just up to your modeling skill to make it look nice. So I am thinking I do not like this being fully symmetrical, so I will disable the symmetry and maybe move the strands without symmetry. So I used the Ctrl D, left click and drag for the linear deformer tool. Then maybe for the second I will enable symmetry. Actually, move this like that. Well, anyway, I do not want to spend too much time just moving the hair strands around, but if you spend a bit more time, you should get quite good looking hair strands, hopefully. And to make this maybe less uniform, I will this time try to add a bit of noise though to this. So I will go to the deformers and in here add deformer noise. Again, this is way too big, so the first parameter to tweak is global scale. Let's make this smaller. In my case, I already know from experience around for realistic size of the head, it will be around 1/10. And you can change now some noise amplitude, seed settings, stuff like that. Maybe you will find the preset that you like the most. And maybe this is not dense enough, so let's go to the strand generation. I will try to bump up density like 4 times. This looks kinda okay, almost. Maybe if I change the frequency of the noise. So let's say this is good enough. And I could maybe bump up the frequency on the curls. So in the profile, we'll go to the frequency, go maybe to 4 or maybe even 5. And this is now a bit too dense and too uniform, so I can modulate that with the input mask. So in the frequency, go to the side menu and search randomize. And now the hair strands frequency is slightly different for each of them. And I would say it looks quite okay for now. The next step would be how to export those into the game. So one way, quite fast, is to just select the hair strands, use Ctrl-Shift-H, and in here there is the finalize. Somewhere in here in the convert. In here. Okay, so this will basically create the mesh version of the system. So this is no longer editable. You cannot groom this, but this is good mesh for exporting with the file export FBX. You see the UVs are applied correctly to here. And maybe this was a bit dense, and if I show you individual curls, maybe from this area, you see we have quite a lot of geometry. I could try to reduce the resolution in the curls. And if I set resolution to 1, we basically got square curls. So maybe let's bump this to 2. And now if I use the finalize, let's see the poly count. It is showing 3000, not too bad. So we can like go to file export, or if you want, you can manually tweak this with vertex and face modeling. Then export that, and if you also want, you can do some weight paint and bone generation. So you would select some strands. You could use then generate bones, and you see we have the rig, and you could generate a bunch of bone chains. So after there is also a slightly faster way to export this if you do not want to rig that and want to just export a static mesh. Use Ctrl-Shift-H, export hair objects. This will show you the FBX export option and the carve object will be automatically converted to mesh. So I think that covers the basics on how to create hairstyle with curly hair like that.